Bash at the Beach 1996. Guys, this was a historic pay-per-view event that happened 25 years ago today. Guys, this is one of the biggest pay-per-view events in wrestling history. This marked the turn of Hulk Hogan to a heel. This marked the start of the NWO. This marked the beginning, the real beginning, many say, of the Monday Night Wars. Think about where the landscape of wrestling was at this point. You had WCW just coming off and starting Nitro. You had WWE really falling in a rut as far as house show attendance goes, and you also had the rise of ECW somewhat, but it was a weird point in time for wrestling. You know, we were used to seeing very white meat baby faces. The product was really cut and dry. There were good guys and bad guys, and there really wasn't any nuance. Enter Scott Hall and Kevin Nash into WCW. They jump ship, begin a storyline where they are an invading force coming in to take over WCW. And when they came in, they attacked WCW officials, wrestlers, destroyed sets, and made it known that at Bash at the Beach 1996, they would be introducing a third man, a partner who would help them in their quest and their takeover of World Championship Wrestling. This third man would also be their tag team partner in a six-way tag team match at the aforementioned Bash at the Beach pay-per-view event. At the event, Scott Hall made his way to the ring, as did Kevin Nash, but the third man did not. Was it a ruse? Were they mistaken? Did the third man have a change of heart? All of these questions immediately popped up into the minds of wrestling fans everywhere, leaving fans frustrated, but also intrigued about what could happen. As the match wound down, the Outsiders began to beat down Macho Man Randy Savage in the ring, as the camera cut to perennial good guy Hulk Hogan, who once again was on his way to the ring to save the day. Hogan gets into the ring, the Outsiders leave the ring. Hogan commands the ring in a moment that will live in wrestling lore forever. He took a look at the camera, delivers one smirk, and then gives a leg drop to Macho Man Randy Savage. Hulk Hogan, who for years was Mr. Eat Your Vitamins, Say Your Prayers, had become what he had fought against for so long. Hulk Hogan had become what we thought he hated. Hulk Hogan was the third man. He then went on to cut a promo claiming that he was sick and tired of the fans and that the power in WCW and in the wrestling world was shifting and that the New World Order, although at the time he said New World Organization, brother, was on the horizon. This moment was not only historic because it marked the end of one of the greatest face runs in wrestling history, but also marked the beginning of the NWO, which lit the dynamite that would launch the Monday Night Wars and professional wrestling into the mainstream in the late 90s. And guys, this cannot be understated. Bash at the Beach 1996 is one of the most important moments in wrestling history because, like I said, everything that happens now, it doesn't happen without this event. Who knows if any of us are fans without Bash at the Beach happening. But, Juggernaut, I'll start with you. When you first saw this, when you first maybe heard about this event, what was your reaction to it, and what does it mean?
You know, I'm like really young and stuff, so I really wasn't around to watch this show live and stuff. Like, because I was born in 98, so I was born at like the tail end of like kind of towards the Attitude Era and stuff.
Right.
But so I watched this show like right when the WWE Network like first came out, like so back in like 2014. And of course, I seen clips of Hulk Hogan doing the leg drop and stuff. But I heard some other people say, who actually watched the show back then. They said that, they were wondering who was this person gonna be? Like people were wondering, was it gonna be Lex Luger? Because he got taken out in this match, and he got stretchered off backstage.
Right.
And people go like, oh, maybe he might do like a run, and then he might be that third guy. Or people were thinking it might be Macho Man. He might be that person. But no, like seeing Hulk Hogan come out there, like, and hearing that pop, everybody is so excited, when it first comes out, and it's crazy to see him do a heel turn. Because like if he was still in WWF, I don't think he would have ever turned heel. Like he would have still been doing that, eat your vitamins and say your prayers, brother. He would have still been doing all that. I don't think a heel turn would have ever happened. And this really, if you hear the firework just go off outside my house there. Yeah, crazy. But yeah, it was just crazy for wrestling. Like I tell you what, like if this never happened, I probably, wouldn't be a wrestling fan, because like with everything going into the Attitude Era and stuff, like this really kicked off the Attitude Era, in my opinion, right here. Like
it definitely did.
And this ignited WWF, go like to get their ass in the gear. Go like, okay, yeah, we need to start stepping up our shows and stuff. Like we need to quit being like all this cartoon type of stuff that's going on right now. Like with the golden days of wrestling, and actually become more like that. Have more of that edge to them. Mm-hmm. So I think this helped out, wrestling in a whole. Like it just helped out wrestling so much. And then, of course, you had that, back and forth, people watching WCW, people watching, Monday Night Raw. It's awesome here.
Exactly. Trevor, you were actually a fan, right, of wrestling during this time, and like you kind of heard about it, or at least, or saw it or heard about it. So as a fan of wrestling in 1996, hearing about this, watching it happen, what did you think?
So in 1996, wrestling was a bit different, and I'm sure you guys already know that. The year prior, Nitro had just kicked off. Hulk Hogan was at the height of his career. He had Pasta Mania, brother. He was that typical babyface heel who was babyface who was a complete annoying. He was the invincible Hogan. Like you couldn't knock him down. He wasn't like giving anybody any fan service or anything. He wasn't selling a damn thing. Like he was just, popping up. That's what people thought about in Hogan. But in that 96 area, you started to see different things happen. Started to see different wrestlers do different things that they hadn't done before. You saw different wrestlers get pushes. Alex Wright got a couple pushes. Alex Wright, if you guys don't know,
Das Wunderkind, Alex Wright. Big shout out to Alex Wright.
Love Alex Wright. I love Alex Wright. And he was a jobber for a very long time. But then in '96, when things started to shift a little bit, you saw different changes in him, different changes in other wrestlers they used. Even on Raw, you saw some things change, but Raw didn't kick it into gear, like you said, Justin, until things started to happen with this invasion. And so it was so interesting. My mom, who hadn't watched wrestling in years, and she was a huge Hulk Hogan fan back in the day. And she was watching this with me and my brother. We paid the pay-per-view and watching it. And like me, just like you, Justin, we were like, hey, maybe it's Luger, maybe Luger is the third guy. Maybe that's it. And then like you saw Hulk Hogan come out. And my brother doesn't watch the show, but if he did, he'd hear me say that he was right about this, and he can't hear that. So, so when Hogan came out, my mom said, "Yeah, get him, Hogan." She was all excited. She said, "My man Terry." She even knew his real name. She said, "Get him, Terry." And Chris looked at her and said, "Don't get your hopes up." And like he called it. He called it completely when he walked in the ring. I don't think anyone else really saw it like that. I mean, I'm sure there were other people.
Bobby Heenan. Whose side is he on?
Whose side is he on? And my brother was like, "Don't get your hopes up." As soon as he walked in the ring, he goes, "I told you so." And then the leg drop happened. And like, as a kid, and because in '96, I was still a kid. I was 11, and so I was like, "Wow, this is crazy!" Like Hulk Hogan. Eat your vitamins. Like I had a wrestle pal of Hulk Hogan because I didn't have the Ultimate Warrior. So
bet you still regret. You would regret that either way.
Yeah, either way, I regret either one. I wanted Big Boss Man, but anyway. But yeah, like it was one of those things where you're like, wow, this this is crazy that this happened. And then DX, and then everything else that happened after that. It was just one of those things. Like it was just a downward. Well, actually, one upward. It was a downward spiral, but it was upward. It was a good thing. You know, it happened. If it was like Omar said, if it wasn't for that, wrestling wouldn't be the way it is. You wouldn't have hardcore titles. You wouldn't have the faction battles that you had. Like you wouldn't have a lot of wrestlers wouldn't be wrestling now because of that. It was one of those things as a kid watching wrestling grow up, you're like partially heartbroken, but at the same time you're like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like it was amazing. It was amazing to see. It really was.
And I like that you said it was kind of like an uphill kind of like spiral for wrestling from then on, because it really was. I don't want to understate this. In my opinion, I'm someone who like I'm a nerd, right? Like I've read everything, seen like matches from back in like the 1930s. I'm like the biggest wrestling nerd I know. But going back and like looking at wrestling history, to me, in the grand scheme of things in professional wrestling, there's only a few things that are actually as important to the popularity and the interest of growing wrestling as this event. And it's like very few things, and like they're really obscure things like Trevor, remember once we talked about 1925, Wayne Munn beat Ed Strangler Lewis for the world title, and like that was like the unbeatable Ed Strangler Lewis, like he lost, and like that means a lot. And you know, and he was this unbeatable monster that no one ever thought would lose, whether it's Bruno Sammartino, the Undertaker less so in his streak, because the wrestling was it didn't really affect his popularity. But you know, this is like the CM Punk pipe bomb on steroids as far as what it means for the growth of wrestling afterwards and a trajectory, because this is what led to wrestling being at its most popular and most profitable in history. And it's weird because when you look back and watch it, guys, and I'm sure you guys have at least watched it a few times. Yeah, it wasn't even executed that well. Like there was a lot that could have gone. Like you had Bobby Heenan saying, "Oh, whose side is he on?" Basically ruining it.
Especially telling everybody what was going on.
Yeah, and then you had Hogan cutting his promo, completely botching the name of this new faction, the New World Organization, brother. But there were also things that I thought were little like notches that actually worked. Like the little smirk Hogan gave. Yeah. That was like. You watch that back, guys. That was so brilliant because it was just like
yeah. He actually had a smirk on the way to the ring too. Like if you pay attention, like walking to the ring, you're like,
it was different. It felt different. You know, we touched on like what it means in wrestling history, what it means in wrestling lore. When you think of Bash at the Beach 1996, when you think of Hulk Hogan's heel turn, what's like the one thing that really pops into your mind? Justin, I'll start with you.
Oh, the one thing that pops into my mind is, you know, Jim, the fans is throwing stuff at the ring there. That's really, like, I mean, we've seen that with like, when did ECW, when they did do that show where everybody threw steel chairs into the ring and stuff?
Oh yeah,
pretty trash.
97. Yeah, that was when Bubba, but Bubba Ray is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of like, this is like the first like big show where you see where everybody, you know, like kind of throwing stuff at the ring, and like people were just pissed off that, you know, Hogan turned heel because, you know, like I said, like you never thought that Hogan would, you know, turn heel here. You thought it would be a babyface forever. Yeah. But I like how edgy WCW was. You're like, hey, let's take chances here. Yeah, you know, let's take a chance.
Yeah,
I mean, that was one of those things, and just to piggyback off what you said, like I remember like watching them throw those bottles, and some of them were, and a lot of them weren't plastic; they were glass. Yeah, like, they were like you could hear him hit the ring, like clink off the ring and hit the wrestler. Like there was one point where one hit Nash, he kind of looked like as to say, "What the fuck? Like why is this hitting me?" Like, but no, like I mean that. A
fan entered the ring. Remember after showing a fan went up, and then Scott Hall like destroyed him, like kicked the lights out of this poor dude.
Like it was one of it was the biggest one of the biggest heel turns we've seen, and like it literally broke fans' hearts. Like literally, there were fans. I know a guy that he was that literally he said after Hogan turned heel, he stopped wrestling. He stopped. He completely stopped watching wrestling. Like I know if they pay into the fans, a lot of people were crying, kids were upset.
Yeah, kids
like,
were crying and stuff. Yeah.
man. It was big. It was a big thing. Like I mean, yeah, wrestling is stage, wrestling's fake, whatever. But it was a big thing. That was like people cried. People were upset. People stopped watching wrestling. Like yeah, man, that was a lot.
I'm surprised there wasn't like a big riot that assumed after like a whole
Me
bunch
too.
of people just jumped the ring and stuff. Like,
Well,
I mean,
people
I
tried.
would have been, yeah,
It was
Yeah,
like
crazy.
Trevor, you and I talked about this before. Wrestling, and Justin, you'll agree with me on this. I think wrestling is at its best when it feels real.
Yeah.
That is like when,
Yes.
like because a lot of people, even in '96, like people knew that the business was pretty much a work. There was like a little bit of suspension of disbelief. Like there was more suspension of disbelief, honestly, than there is now. But it was like the dirt sheet floor around, and the hardcore fans knew what was going on. But when Hogan turned heel, that all went out the window. For like that moment in time, this was real. And those are the real turning points, I think, in the history of wrestling. When you legitimately look at, when you get the crowd to pop, when you get the crowd to like mark out at what's happening or react in a way that's beyond just like enjoying the performance of what's going on, that's when wrestling is at its finest because you got him in the palm of your hands. That's what Stone Cold always says. When you got him in the palm of your hands, that's that's when you can play around with them, and then that's when the business is good because the fans are more intrigued and care more about what they're seeing. So this was
and also I want to say something here. Like there really hasn't been like as of recent here, there hasn't been anything to go like, oh yeah, like feels like so real and stuff. Like ever since probably, I don't know, maybe since like 2001 or so. You know, like this is like you're like really suspensing the moment, like you're really suspending your disbelief and stuff. We really have maybe 2011 when CM Punk did his whole pipe bomb, maybe that. But ever since then, we haven't had much of that.
Greatest heel turn ever? Question mark.
So you know what? There's only two I can think of. Honestly,
Ooh.
it's only two I can think of, and this is one of them. And now the second one, you have to understand what time period it was, and you also have to understand how much of a face he was. When Shawn Michaels kicked Marty Jannetty through the glass. So I don't know if you're familiar with this, Justin, but there was you do know Shawn Michaels was a member of a team called the Rockers, right?
Yeah. I'm a big Shawn Michaels fan. That's my favorite.
Cool.
That's my favorite wrestler of all time.
We can be definitely friends.
The man has a wrestling podcast. You don't think that he knows what?
You don't think I know who the
how
Rockers
condescending
are?
you
The
sound
reason
now.
I asked is because he said he was young. That's all. That's the only reason I asked.
I mean, I am a young fan, but like I do my research. You know, I watched old stuff.
That's like you saying like, oh yeah, like. It's like, oh yeah, back when, so you don't know this, but when George W. Bush was president, like, of course we know.
No, but Brutus Beefcake had his show, The Barbershop, whatever, and they had the little tiff. Shawn Michaels came out in this leather jacket and everything, and they're sitting there, and this isn't for you. This is for the rest of the fans that have never seen it. And they're doing an interview to him, and Brutus is like, "What's going on? Like, is there turmoil in the Rockers?" And Shawn Michaels gives his Shawn Michaels answer, and him and Martin Jannetty hug, right? They embrace each other, they raise each other's hand. Shawn takes a step back and super kicks him directly through a glass window. And the greatest thing about that was not just the fact that this was one of a big pivotal point in Shawn's career, because you never seen Shawn be heel. Shawn was always a perennial face, but it was also great to hear Bobby Heenan go, see, I knew they were going to get back together. One isn't good if he is with the other. One's not good by alone. And then as soon as Shawn kicked him through the face, I knew he was going to do that. I just knew it. Bobby made that segment so much better. So to me, two greatest heel turns, Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty, Hulk Hogan, NWO.
I just want to interject real quick and say that, dude, that wasn't even the best Shawn Michaels heel turn. Shawn Michaels heel run in 2005 is historic No one will ever convince me
but
otherwise.
that was
It is arguably the greatest few months of Shawn Michaels like performance that Shawn Michaels ever had.
You talking about when he was the
dude, I love
NWO?
No, I'm talking about 2005. Remember when he turned heel for that Hogan program he did
Oh,
at
that shit.
SummerSlam? And he did.
That was kind of ruined, though.
What do you mean? It was kind of no.
Great,
But
it was ruined by the match.
Come on, that was okay. The match was not.
Yeah.
What,
that was an amazing. Like,
come on,
old
dude,
school,
the Bret
Shawn
Hart,
Michaels, just
the Bret Hart thing in Montreal.
Oh, that was so
playing
great.
his music.
So great.
Oh, amazing!
It was so great. So great.
Justin, I'm sorry. Is this the greatest heel turn ever? Hulk Hogan at Bash at the Beach '96.
You know, I think there's actually 3. Okay, so that Shawn Michaels one, I kind of want to piggyback off of that one. That was a really good one. Like, I really wasn't thinking that one in my mind, but yeah, that's a really good one when he turned on Marty Jannetty.
Yeah.
Another good one is when Stone Cold he turned heel. Yeah, that was like was it May 27, May 17? Yeah,
X7
it was
baby.
X7 baby 2001. You know that's one of the greatest pay-per-views ever, like in wrestling history. I think there's another one. No, yeah, those are my 3. Yeah, those are the 3 ones. The Hogan, Michaels, and Stone Cold. Yeah.
I love how like that last one is like Hulk Hogan's like turned the wrestling business upward, and then Stone Cold turning heel, just like
right.
like we just woof, and the business went in the complete opposite direction.
You know, another moment that kind of made wrestling kind of like feel real, like was when they did the whole Brian Pillman stuff, because you didn't know if like he was actually a loose cannon or like if he was playing a character and stuff. Like he really played the biz, like he really knew what he was doing and stuff. Like if he was still around, I think, man, he would definitely be up there with Stone Cold and stuff. Like
smartest man in pro wrestling history, Brian Pillman, playing all sides. But I will say this, there are, as far as heel turns go, there's like no heel turn that I think is more important as far as the wrestling business goes. Like it's just like this is it. Like it changed the business forever. And that's why, for me, it's the best, right? But if we're talking about, like, storyline-wise, right? Specifically just the story of what was going on. When you think about it, it was really good, like, because just to see Hogan turn heel. It was like a spectacle. But the story was pretty shit, if we're being honest. Like,
it was.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it wasn't that great. But, like, so for me, I like, that's how I kind of think about it. Like, the moment itself was greatest heel turn ever, but as far as the storyline for me, the best storyline heel turn for me, it's a tie between the Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Hulk Hogan. The Mega Powers exploding.
That's the good one.
Because that was built up for a year. That was like one of the best long-term builds in wrestling history, to be honest. So that one and the Andre Hogan. Like Andre Hogan to me in 1987. What people I don't think understand really what that meant at that time, because Andre was the biggest, most unbeatable monster in pro wrestling. Everyone knew he was never gonna lose, and the fact, and he never wanted the title. He made that abundantly clear for a long time. He never wanted to take the title off of his friend Hulk Hogan. It was a very long build, and then you saw this huge 7-foot giant just explode with rage, rip the cross off of Hulk Hogan, leave him bloody and bleed. It's literally one of Hogan's best coked up promos he's ever done, and it was like one of the. And it was the best, like Piper's Pit. It was amazing. That in a storyline for me is also like I think the best, because it just. Like literally anyone who's watching was just so captivated emotionally, because people believed that Hulk Hogan and Andre were really like tight friends, and it just poof. Thanks for watching this video from Real Take Sports Talk. Remember to like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new video is released. Also remember to check out our live show every single Thursday at 8 p.m. right here on the YouTube channel. And remember, keep it real.